Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. I wanted to give a shout out to my channel members, Dreams, Stephanie Dahlberg, Tammy Wilson, and Kitten's Daddy. Thank you guys so much for all your support. You have no idea how much it means to me. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like the video. So today's case was requested by Aisha, so thank you so much for this case suggestion. Now this case has so many issues. So first we get to know a family, two sisters. This evolves into a love triangle, which eventually leads to a brutal murder. It's not what you expect, so let's get into it. We are talking about the Khan family, in particular the two sisters Saima and Saba. Saima was born in 1982 and her younger sister Saba was born 7 years later in 1989. Their family consisted of their mom, their dad, and their two brothers. There's not much really I could find about their early life apart from the fact that they grew up actually in the Netherlands and then they moved to England when Saba turned 18 in the year 2009. They came from a Muslim family, and while they were traditional in their culture, they were proud of their culture, they were also open to the Western world and that culture, and they also spoke fluent Dutch. Saima was known to be a very gentle, kind, and loving woman. She was the eldest in the family, so she naturally took on that role, and Saba really looked up to her older sister. Their family was pretty close and they all got along really well. They moved to the Luton area, which is about 50 kilometers or so, 20 something miles away from London. And over here, Saima began pursuing her studies in nursing. The Luton area in Bedfordshire is a very culturally diverse area and it's known for its large Pakistani community. The Khans lived in a brick house in the Chalney area, and I don't know what they called it in England, I forgot, but in Australia we call it a townhouse, where it's basically usually a builder builds one giant house on a block of land, but then they subdivide it and those houses are actually built, they're actually two smaller houses and they're mirroring each other. So what do you guys call it? Comment down below. So the house isn't really huge, but it had quite a large family in it. Then a couple of years later, Saima, she's now approaching 21 and her parents believe, okay, it's time for you to get married. So they contacted their people back in Pakistan and then they found a family who was also looking for their son to be married. Now, obviously a lot more than that goes into an arranged marriage, and I'm guessing these families were somewhat familiar with each other or they knew each other. So following this, the Khans introduced Saima to her future husband. His name was Hafiz Rehman and he was 3 years older than Saima and exactly 10 years older than her younger sister Saba. Hafiz had lived all his life in Pakistan. He had never been out of the country, but he was seen as a good match for Saima and he would have more opportunities and a better life in the UK. Marrying Saima would eventually grant Hafiz a British passport. Now you guys know I delved a little bit deeper into this and I actually found an article discussing arranged marriages, especially in Pakistan, between Pakistan and the UK. And this is quite common nowadays and even for decades prior, where the desire of a foreign, or in this case, a British passport, leads to marriages taking place between a circle of close relatives in certain communities. Arranged marriages between cousins take place, between couples who have huge age gaps, and this is usually for the benefit of the man. And most women, some women are pressured into these marriages by their families. And this often leads to exploitation in these marriages. I read a stat on gov.uk that says Pakistan has the largest number of forced marriage cases in the UK. So in 2022, there were 147 cases, which is 49%, linked to Pakistan as the focus country. Then in 72% of these cases, the victim was in the UK and the focus was on preventing the marriage before it was due to take place or preventing the victim from being forced to sponsor a spousal visa. So I just thought that was interesting to share. It's always good to know the stats. So after they got married, Hafiz moved from Pakistan to the UK, to the Luton area, and began working as a taxi driver. I don't believe he came from a wealthy family because once he moved to the UK, he ended up moving in with the Khan family into that already crammed home. I guess that doesn't actually mean he didn't have any money, because usually when you move to a new country, especially when you come from certain cultures, you kind of want to feel a little bit more familiar. So maybe that's why he moved in to the home. But at the same time, it's also quite normal and even customary for families to join and live together as one giant family. Soon after, Saima fell pregnant with their first child, a baby girl. Now, Hafiz came from a more traditional family, and his beliefs and values were a little bit more old school. He believed Saima should take care of him, provide for him, look after their home, cook for him, and he also didn't believe in protected sex. So soon after, they welcomed another 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, into the Khan home. A total of 4 kids, Saima and Hafiz, the parents, Saba, and her 2 brothers, totaling up to 11 people living in that home. The family seemed to be doing well apart from the day-to-day stresses of life and living together in such a large family. But Saba began to feel the strain in her relationship forming once Saima and Hafiz got married. Saima had other priorities now, and Saba felt like she was being neglected by her sister, that her older sister didn't have time for her anymore, and that she had to now share her with these new members in the family. But there was a secret inside this family, a secret that no one knew, but was right under everyone's nose. Saba, Saima's younger sister, fell in love with her husband, Hafiz. And Hafiz reciprocated the feelings. What? I know. Hafiz and Saba began a secret affair despite their 10-year age gap, despite her being his wife's younger sister, despite the fact that they lived together in the same home with other members of this family, despite the fact that he was her sister's husband and she was a sister-in-law. It's like out of a movie for real. Hafiz took advantage of Saba's inexperience and innocence. The affair began soon after the birth of their first child. In the meanwhile, Saba continued to have a somewhat good relationship with her sister and would even look after her children. She played the role of a good aunt. But in the years that followed, their double life continued, with the affair routinely being on again, off again. And as time passed, Saba continued to grow increasingly obsessed with Hafiz. Saba and Hafiz would communicate with each other via WhatsApp, and obviously living together in the same home as Saima and Hafiz, Saba was aware of the text messages they would send each other. In one message to Hafiz, Saba wrote, "That bitch you constantly text 24/7, but me you don't have time." That bitch was her sister Saima. And Saba would be infuriated if Hafiz would not give her the same attention he would give his wife, Saima. Their affair was rocky, to say the least. And, you know, this close family bond in the Pakistani culture, living under the same roof, turned their home into a volcano waiting to erupt. The affair was taking place right under everyone's nose in secret, but was that really the case, or was everyone just pretending it wasn't happening? It's hard to imagine that there was no tension between Saba and Hafiz, sexual or angry tension, you know, given the home wasn't that big. However, Saima was oblivious to the affair. She was a dedicated mom, a hardworking nurse, looking after 4 children, working part-time. The affair just slipped through her sights. And she would not have dreamed that her younger sister would betray her in such a way. Saba and Hafiz would routinely have sex inside his taxi or inside the home when Saima was at work. So their kids were 7, 4, 2, and 1 in age, and Saba would often help in looking after the kids, and Hafiz was a taxi driver, which meant he could work his own hours. And it's pretty sick that they would continue their affair in the family home while the kids were there, while possibly the parents were there, it's sick. But despite the affair, Hafiz would always put his wife first, and this enraged Saba. At one point, Hafiz was even considering taking Saba as his second wife. He would have been happy being married to both sisters. But it's alleged that when Hafiz went to their local imam to inquire about being married to both sisters at the same time, he was told that this was forbidden in Islam. So he chose to continue on with the affair instead. It seemed Hafiz enjoyed tainting Saba's innocence. Maybe the forbidden aspect of the affair made it all the more exciting. The fact that Saba was young, unmarried, and not supposed to be in relationships with men. A few years into the affair, Saba would fall pregnant with Hafiz's child. And, this was due to him not believing in contraception, even with someone who wasn't his wife. He just refused. And when he became aware of the pregnancy, he forced Saba to have an abortion to prevent the affair being exposed, and this becoming a massive family scandal. So it's possible that after this abortion, Hafiz realized that maybe this affair wasn't the best idea. So in February 2016, 4 years into the affair with his sister-in-law, Hafiz had a change of heart. He wanted to make a fresh start with his wife and his 4 kids. Perhaps moving into their own place would be the change that they needed. The affair became off again. The threat of Hafiz moving into his own place with his own family, with no room for Saba, was more than she could handle. Saba was infatuated with Hafiz. The thought of losing him, losing control of the situation, led Saba's mind to wander to the only logical explanation, even if it was also the darkest. She wanted Hafiz to be entirely hers, and she would stop at nothing to achieve this. Saba began turning to the internet, looking for ways to get rid of her sister Saima once and for all. Once Saima was gone, Saba could take her place in the family. The perfect family that Saima had created for herself. And they could all just live happily ever after. Saba was desperate. She looked up venomous snakes for sale. She researched the ins and outs of poisoning people. She looked up how to hire a killer. She even studied this online article called 16 Steps to Kill Someone and Not Get Caught, because, that was the answer. In March 2016, Saba contacts a spiritual hitman, a black magic priest in Pakistan. She told this priest about a situation that a woman was in. She spoke in the third person. She referred to herself as this woman, and that this woman needed to get rid of another woman, Saima, so this woman could have the man finally, Hafiz. She allegedly paid this priest £5,000 over 6k USD or 9k AUD to make this happen. She believed this priest could just put a spell on Saima and make her vanish. She wrote, "Sorry to bother you again and again. My friend is really upset now. Hafiz does not even look at her. He says he realizes his mistake. You finish off Saima as quick as possible so Saba can get her Hafiz back." So after she paid this money to the priest, this man quickly vanished. Because A, he was a scammer, and B, he was probably like, holy shit, this chick is crazy. Saba could not bear the thought of losing Hafiz. She really thought he was the one for her. And to be fair, he really did take advantage of Saba. Saba was struggling with the abortion she felt forced to have of the possibility of having this baby with Hafiz. On top of that, what kind of makes it even more gross is that Hafiz, he was introduced to the sisters when he was around 21 and Saima was like 17, 18 at the time. But that means that Saba was only 10, 11 years old. In the meanwhile, though, Saba did eventually date another man. They were set up and the relationship went well. An arranged marriage was considered between the two, even though she was madly in love with her brother-in-law. But the two families failed to come to some sort of agreement and then the relationship fell apart. This was extremely hard for Saba to deal with. She just felt like she was receiving blow after blow. It was hard for her to see her sister, in her eyes, having the perfect life, the perfect marriage, the perfect children, while she was being denied her own. Saba at this point was 27 years old. She was still unmarried. She had no children of her own, no relationship, and her future path was just so unclear. She became jealous, resentful, and angry towards her sister Saima. And I don't know why people do this. Like, why not be angry at Hafiz? Why be angry at your sister? But you can't control your emotions when you have an affair that you shouldn't be having. Soon, Saima and Hafiz found the perfect apartment for them in a different area of Luton. The date they would be moving into that apartment was going to be May 25th, 2016. Saba felt that Saima was living the life that she deserved, and the only solution was to get rid of Saima. At this point, Hafiz's interest in Saba was on its decline, and it was now transferring back to his wife, Saima. Saba texted Hafiz during this time saying, "If I could, I would take my heart out and show you what you are for me. Nothing in this world can change my feelings for you, not even you. Day by day, my love for you gets stronger." Damn, she said, not even you, meaning that, even if he stopped liking you, you're going to be like, too bad, I still love you, I'm going to get you. And that's exactly what she did. Saba came up with a plan. She realized she had to get rid of Saima on her own flesh and blood, in order to steal her perfect life. So on May 21st, 2016, Saba walks into a Tesco and buys a knife. On May 23rd, 2016, Saba was aware that an elderly relative of the family had died and that it was arranged that her parents would be attending the funeral at a local mosque that night. Hafiz was working and Saima was unable to go because she worked as a nurse carer and was due to attend an elderly woman's home that night to care for her. She left for work at 10:15 p.m. that night. Saba remained at home to look after the 4 kids. While at home, Saba searched online to find out how long a Muslim funeral normally lasts. This would be the time frame in which she would strike while babysitting her sister's children. While the 4 children were asleep upstairs at about 11 p.m., Saba would text her sister Saima and ask her to come home. She told Saima that her youngest daughter, who had recently celebrated her first birthday, would not stop crying and wanted her mother. At 11:03 p.m., Saima responded with, "I'm on my way." In reality, the children were completely fine and asleep upstairs. A neighbor's camera caught the moment Saima arrived outside her home and showed her entering the home at 11:07 p.m. The lights were seen turning on inside the home. Once Saima entered the home, she turned on the downstairs hallway lights, and 45 seconds later, the lights were turned off. The downstairs was in complete darkness. That was the moment Saba struck. As Saima entered the hallway of her home, Saba attacked her with the knife she bought from Tesco. Saima screamed and fought for her life. Saba stabbed her own sister 68 times and cut her throat so deep that it nearly decapitated her. She then proceeded to chop off her sister's hand, remove some clothing, and continue to stab her even after she already died. From the commotion, neighbors heard Saima's screams, and her eldest daughter awoke from her sleep. She walked on over to the stairs and yelled out, "Auntie, are you killing a mouse?" I believe Saba then told her to just go back to her room. Saima suffered 68 knife wounds in this frenzied attack, including severed arteries and a jugular vein and deep wounds to her arms, her skull, and her face. After the murder, Saba breaks a window near the front of the home, throws her bloody clothes into plastic bags, hid this in her room, together with the bloody knife, some jewelry that she stole, and Saima's phone. She then took a shower, called her father and then the emergency services, and claimed that a robbery had taken place and that her sister had been murdered. The rest of the family then came home and found Saima lying in a pool of blood. When the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Saima was already dead. The crime scene was so brutal and so violent that at first police believed the assailant to be a man. There was also body cam footage from that night of the police questioning Saba. She told police that she heard her sister come home. She then went to take a shower and heard this loud noise and heard Saima screaming. When she rushed downstairs, she found her sister's bloody body. Police then asked Saba how she got this cut on her hand, and she stated that it was from all the glass that was lying around from the broken window. Detectives initially believed her claims and began investigating the incident, but they found her entire demeanor during the incident quite rehearsed and unemotional. Given her sister was attacked in such a brutal and violent manner in a normally safe and quiet neighborhood while she was upstairs alone watching the 4 kids, you would expect Saba to be more distressed. Police checked the local area, they checked cars coming and going and searched for any leads. Once police were made aware of the findings of the autopsy, how she was dead after the first few blows and she was repeatedly stabbed over and over again, despite this, things just didn't seem right. This was a crime of passion. This was personal. A stranger would not do this, would not spend the time attacking someone this many times inside a home if it wasn't personal. So they began to question Saba once more. After all, she was the closest to her sister Saima. Saba then tells a story about Saima's affair, how she had a secret lover and maybe he did this. And this also didn't sit right with the police because it seemed like Saba was trying to taint Saima's reputation. A woman who, according to many others, would never do such a thing. But they did look into Hafiz because if this affair was real, maybe Hafiz found out and took his revenge. The crime was also so violent that they really did believe a man had committed it. So the police began their investigations. They looked into the family's whereabouts the past few days and seized all computers in the home. They soon learned that Saba had purchased a knife at Tesco, and they also discovered those Google searches. The knife purchased also matched the weapon used in the attack. Then Saba's phone was searched. A long trail of messages were found. A 4-year affair was uncovered. The affair with her brother-in-law, Hafiz. On May 31st, 2016, 8 days after the murder took place, Saba's room was searched. Over there, they found the missing jewelry that was supposedly taken in a robbery, the bloody knife, phone, and the bloody clothes that Saba had been wearing during the attack that night. Saba was then arrested. At first, Saba denied any involvement in the murder, but did admit to the affair she was having with Hafiz. She stated that, however, after the miscarriage, she distanced herself from the couple. She insisted that it was a burglary gone wrong. After several further interrogations, Saba finally broke down and admitted to attacking her sister. She claimed Hafiz manipulated her into the affair, that he wanted her all to himself, but only on the side. That every relationship Saba tried to get into, Hafiz would make sure to spoil it, manipulate her parents into not allowing it. She claimed that Hafiz was physically abusive to her over the years, and she felt trapped by him as he was 10 years older than her and he wanted to keep her, control her. During the trial in October 2017, Saba finally pled guilty. The prosecution claimed that Saba was obsessed with Hafiz, that she hated Saima for being with Hafiz and having this perfect life. Several of their WhatsApp messages were presented in court where Saba expressed her hatred she had towards her because of the affection that Hafiz was showing to her. They claimed Hafiz wanted to end the relationship with Saba despite continuing to have sex with her, even in the days leading up to the murder. Saba's lawyer, Joe Sidhu, claims that Hafiz isn't blameless in his wife's death. Hafiz did eventually admit to the affair, but he tried to blame Saba for it. He told police that he had been forced to have sex with Saba over a period of several years. Joe said Saba was a lonely individual, had traits of mental health issues, and in the past had cut herself and strangled herself. He claimed, for the rest of her natural life, she will live with what she has done. The remorse is something that will infect her for the rest of her days. Saba showed no emotion as she was sentenced to life with a minimum of 22 years for the murder of her sister, Saima. Hafiz later made a statement saying, "I never imagined anything like this would ever happen. Saba's actions have left our 4 children without a mum. I have 4 beautiful children, but I've lost my world and I cry every day. Saima was there for all of our children. She did everything." The defense lawyer also stated, referring to Hafiz, in his heart, he knew that he'd contributed to the way in which his wife's life had ended. Had he not embarked on this affair, the situation would have never spiraled in the way that it did. This case is so messed up. A sister murdered her own flesh and blood, her older sister, in the hopes that it would lead to her being with the man that she was in love with, her brother-in-law. Saba felt she didn't have the perfect life, the happiness that she deserved. And now she will spend the rest of her life in jail, never having a chance at either. Do you find it strange that Hafiz never got punished for this crime? I've read many articles online claiming that he too should have been responsible, should have been punished. It's hard to say because he didn't physically or verbally have any involvement in the planning of the murder of Saima, of his wife. No evidence was ever found of him guiding Saba to do so. And I really doubt that he would have wanted Saima dead. He wanted both of them. He didn't want just one of them. He didn't want Saba over Saima. However, what about statements that he could have made, like, "I can't be with you because of your sister. I can't do this to your sister. I'm married to Saima, not you." Could those words be seen as guidance to get rid of Saima? Well, yes, but only to someone with mental health issues, right? Did Hafiz drive Saba to murder her own sister? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like Hafiz was literally just trying to have his cake and eat it too. And I never understand that saying. Why would you have cake and not want to eat it? The funny thing is, in this love triangle, and most love triangles involving a man and 2 women, the women always want to blame each other. It's the other woman's fault why I can't be with this man. Why is it not the man's fault for having 2 relationships? Why couldn't he make the decision and be with the one person? Why do women get jealous of each other instead of realizing that the one doing the wrong thing is the guy? It's funny, isn't it? Saba ended the life of the one person that she probably truly loved the most for a man she thought she loved the most. Trust me, nobody is ever worth murder. What do you guys think of today's case? It's just wild to me. Your siblings piss you off, but you're not going to kill them, hopefully. Let me know your thoughts on today's case down below, guys, and I will see you in next week's video. Besitos. Bye.